Okay, it's 9:30. I think we can get started. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committees to order. And I would like to ask, today's 9/11, and I would like to ask that we have a moment of silence in remembrance of 9/11. Okay, thank you very much. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment this morning? Doesn't look like it. All right, we'll move on to the Executive Director's report. Georgiana, good morning.
Yes, well, good morning. Great to see everyone here today. I do want to update you on a few items that is in your agenda package. The first item is an update on a recent grant that we offered technical assistance to the county, and that, of course, is our Ellis Road Infra grant, or infrastructure grant, which is a USDOT grant. And for any of the new members, of course, the Ellis Road widening is the TPO's #1 priority on our list of priority projects. But the grant was officially submitted by Brevard County on August the 18th. Brevard County is the official applicant. And on page 5 and 6 of your agenda package is the Ellis Road fact sheet that we developed just to help educate and advocate for the project. It's just a quick snapshot of the amount of funds that we are asking for, which is $46.9 million in grant funds. We have a $34.1 million match, and that is a combination of local funds, funds from the TPO, and state funding. And the total cost of the project is $81.1 million, which is quite a hefty price tag. And of course, that is due to, the cost of materials, the inflationary costs, labor and what have you, has just really skyrocketed here recently. We may not find out that Brevard County, that we will have received the award potentially for 8 months, which would put us in probably April of next year. So that is a little unfortunate because we would like to know right away. So it is possible that we may have to resubmit next year when the notice of funding opportunity comes out, because apparently if you do not receive a USDOT grant the first time around, a lot of people, a lot of municipalities will the second time around. And I think you learn things from the first time, especially if it's your first time submitting one of these large grants. There is a learning curve. So that is our plan. And something to think about, the $81.1 million, that's just for construction. There's, basically $38 million on the right-of-way phase, and the right-of-way will be certified around November of 2024. And then there's the design funding, as well as the PD&E funding. So we're talking over $100 million project for 1.7 miles to widen Ellis Road. But I think we all know that the importance of that project is extremely critical. So I just want to say thank you to all of our funding partners, the City of Melbourne, the City of West Melbourne, the Melbourne Orlando International Airport could not help from a funding perspective due to federal regulations, but they have been a tremendous partner, helping to hold meetings, meeting with FDOT staff, you know, it's the Melbourne Regional Chamber has been a very important partner as well. So this is a project with a tremendous amount of support. So we keep your fingers crossed. And again, we are in the advocacy stage at this point, and we can use all the help that we can get. Speaking of funding, the DOT's work program development is underway. We had our meeting with Secretary Tyler the very first part of July to discuss our list of priority projects. And we've been in the process of holding intake meetings with DOT and our local governments, specifically the local governments that submitted new projects to be added to our priority list. And we're also receiving estimate updates on some of our projects that are already funded in the DOT work program, specifically off-system. So we want to ensure that the projects that we funded with our federal funding has full funding, and so we're trying to work with our local governments to make sure those estimates are updated and work with the DOT. The DOT will receive their allocations later this month, as they normally do, and there will be the work program public hearing, I think, is scheduled for October, which is kind of an early timeline, and then they will be presenting the work program in December. So stay tuned for that. That is a very important part of what we do here at the TPO. You know, as I typically say, it's where the planning meets the money. This is one of the most important things we do, and that is to bring in that state and federal funding into Brevard County for our projects. Also in your package, you have the fiscal year 23 operating budget for our third quarter, which runs from April to June. And you also have the meeting minutes from the last governing board meeting, which was July 13th. And the governing board did adopt our fiscal year 24 list of priority projects, as well as our 24 through 28 transportation improvement program. So, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thanks, Georgiana. I just want to make a comment about the infra grant. I was involved with you and everybody, but what I really wanted to say was it's really through your leadership, Georgiana, and your staff, working with with the contractor and then all the stakeholders and putting together. It was a difficult application. It was not easy. So I know how hard you worked, and the community could be very proud of the job that in the package that was submitted. We really put our best foot forward. So thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. There's two items. The first item is the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes from July 10th, 2023. And the second item is the functional classification updates. Can I get a motion from the TAC? Yes, sir.
New construction, and the rest are mill and resurface. And the future is less road building. I mean, that's just in the future, not less, a lot less road building, because the money just isn't there. So these mill and resurface and safety projects, and once in a while, a good investment like yours comes along, but there isn't going to be much opportunity for road building in the very near future. I used to think it was further downstream than what it actually is. I thought the cost of right-of-way would slow it down, but now it's not only the cost of right-of-way, it's the cost to build the crap on top of the right-of-way. So we're just not going to see much road building, and probably they're already rethinking what our direction is and what our direction is going to go, because it's certainly not new roads.
Good point.
Yep. Thank you, Pete. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll go back to the consent agenda and to the Technical Advisory Committee. Can I get a motion? Okay, we have a motion. Can I have a second? Second by Jared. Over to you, sir.
Okay, and from the CAC, can I get a motion, please?
I'll do.
Motion from Adam, second from Josiah. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Christy Fisher.
Yeah, and Jared. Sorry.
And you got the CAC? That's
And from the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is our action items. We have one action item today. It's the adoption of the fiscal year 2024 Central Florida MPO Alliance list of project priorities. Georgiana?
All right, this is really a housekeeping item, but we do have a new project that we want to add to this regional list. And for new members, you know, each year the Central Florida MPO Alliance develops and approves a regional list of priority projects. And this is where the 5 MPOs come together, like Sumter, Metro Plan Orlando, Ocala Marion, River to Sea, and the Space Coast. We come together and we develop a regional list of priorities. And the priorities are separated into categories based on types of projects or funding type that supports these priorities. And so we went through the list to do any minor updates on cost estimates. Of course, on the SIS list, the Strategic Intermodal System, Ellis Road, the widening of Ellis is the #1 priority for the region. And so we have updated those cost estimates to include the new costs as well as our new funding match that we have. But there is a new project on the TRIP list. TRIP is the Transportation Regional Incentive Program, which was created to improve regionally significant facilities. These are state funds available at 50% to provide incentives for local governments and the private sector to help pay for projects that support regional travel and commerce. And we have quite a few of our regionally significant priorities on that TRIP list. But we want to add one more, and that is the St. John's Heritage Parkway from Malabar Road to basically 0.73 miles north of Emerson Drive, which is the northern city limits of Palm Bay. It's approximately 3 miles long, and this is for future widening. The city of Palm Bay just recently received a $1.5 million state appropriation for design. And so this is a project that we would like to add to the TRIP list for future right-of-way and or construction. And again, it does require a 50% match, but it's a good opportunity and certainly qualifies as a regionally significant project. So we always want to have as many funding opportunities as possible for our regionally significant priorities. So that is what we are asking. They're just minor updates throughout the list, but we are asking for the addition of this project on the TRIP list for approval.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, Christine.
So Palm Bay needs the right-of-way still, but they've done the design?
Can I explain?
Yes, sir.
Frank from the city of Palm Bay, the right-of-way has all been acquired.
Okay.
So,
This is
so the
right-of-way.
current funding right now, the allocation with the city's match will be for the design. Future funds will be for construction only. All right-of-way has been taken care of.
Yep, my bad, my apologies.
Okay.
Any discussions from the TAC? Yes, sir.
I noticed the Washington extension is on this list. Is there any update on that project?
There's not an update. We have not moved forward with that project since the DOT did the original corridor study. And their determination when that corridor study was done was the cost far outweighed the benefit of the project. So we've just we don't want it to go away. We certainly see the need of the Washingtonia extension. It's just we're not really sure where to go from here. And at what point do we dust it off and take another look at it? And I think perhaps maybe that's something we should, probably sit down when we kind of review some of our priorities, Todd, and, next year and see at what would be a good opportunity between the city and the county to actually move that project forward and see if we get a different outcome at this point.
Any other discussion or questions from the TAC? Go ahead, Christine.
I'm sorry, just clarification. So what does the Central Florida Alliance do when they get this list? Do you guys do anything?
So this,
Thank you.
the Central Florida MPO Alliance, when we develop the regional list, after that is adopted in October, so all of the MPOs meld their lists together, their list of priority projects into these different categories. We will officially adopt it in October at the Alliance, and then that list is turned over to the DOT, very similar to how we turn our list over to the department to try and fund those projects with available state and federal funding. That list doesn't provide any new funding. You know, it's still the same old funding pots that we always have, but the thoughts are that as a region, we get together and we prioritize projects so that the department can have an idea about what is important for the region, which is really important for, you know, you've got competitive MPOs coming together, competing for the same funding to come together and say, look, these are our regional priorities, and that will hopefully help the department make the right decisions on the priority list.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion or questions from the TAC? If not, I would look for a motion to approve.
Before that, Cliff, is there any discussion from the CAC? Ginger.
Yeah, I have a question on the Heritage Parkway.
Josiah, would you move that microphone to her? Thank you.
Sorry.
I have a question concerning the Heritage Parkway, the impact to Malabar Road that connects to it. Is there any, I know it's not on the list, but.
The widening of Malabar West
Is on the list.
Yeah.
is on the list. It is not only on our annual list of priorities, it's also on the trip list. And the design for Malabar West has been fully funded for
Okay.
$10 million, and the city of Palm Bay is moving forward with the design coming up. So it's moving. It is definitely moving.
And we're addressing all multimodal opportunities?
Absolutely. Malabar West is going to have a tremendous amount of multimodal opportunities. And we've even talked with, and Frank may be able to talk about this more, that potentially that may be a good opportunity for a raise grant, you know, because of all the different modes that we can discuss on that project. You know, there's also roundabouts on that project that's being designed. So it definitely covers everything, including resiliency as well. So we thought that a raise grant might be a good opportunity for the future for that project.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
Frank?
And just to update on the same idea on the Malabar Road, the widening project is only from Mitten Road out to the St. John's Heritage Parkway, but we're looking at the entire corridor from I-95 to the Parkway, and that we're looking at beyond just the road improvements, as she mentioned, several multimodal improvements, larger pathways and bikeways. We're also looking at, we're in design right now for an ITS corridor for that roadway to make it a smart corridor. And I have been talking with SCAT regarding improvements to the transit and making it a high transit corridor, making maybe one of the first advanced transit corridors to make in Malabar Road. So we are working with all the agencies.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Yeah, I want to comment too. I was happy to see the widening of St. John's Heritage Parkway added to the list. For those who don't live in Palm Bay or are aware of it, but St. John's Heritage Parkway was, it took 30 years to get that thing built. And it was built essentially as a hurricane evacuation route. Well, if you drive on that route right now, it's not going to evacuate anyone. It's almost bumper to bumper, especially in the mornings and the afternoons during rush hour. So widening St. John's Heritage Parkway is absolutely critical. I mean, if you don't know, there are going to be several thousand new homes built along that corridor in Palm Bay. So it's really, it's critical to do that, as well as widening Malabar Road. That's all. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Capital list.
Is this going to double the width?
Of Malabar, of the Parkway? Yes. One good thing that they did, people questioned when they built the Parkway and opened it one lane in each direction and said, well, why build it just one lane? Why didn't you make it 4 lanes at that time? And the reason was simple, money. If they had waited to build a wider roadway, they wouldn't have had the funding to do it. So they built it 1 lane in each direction, but they were smart enough to acquire the right-of-way.
Yeah.
So we already own the right-of-way to widen it, and it's just a cost of construction.
Adam Kohler, thank you.
And, yes, Pete?
Jump on transit, jump ahead to transit. There's 2 items for the Cocoa Station. One we know is Brightline. The other one we were talking about, a stop for Amtrak. Is that what we're looking at? One is a stop for Amtrak and one is Brightline, or are they both Brightline? This is under the regional transit priorities. I see Orlando's getting most of the cash.
A Amtrak station, no, that would not be for us here in Brevard.
Okay.
So this is a regional list, so no.
So both those line items then are for Brightline? Because there's 2 line items.
I'm trying to find, sorry, Pete.
You want to take your time, you know, I'm coming out the blue on you. You're thinking
All right,
roads
here
and
we
I'm
go,
thinking
here we go.
buses and trains.
You're throwing curveballs, Pete.
Laura probably has the answer to this.
The Brightline Cocoa Station revenue study, that's supporting Brightline's revenue study. The Intermodal Passenger Rail Station is the study that the TPO is doing. So they're both related to Brightline?
Yes, yes.
At the Cocoa Station.
Okay, I would look for a motion from the TAC. Christine, she makes a motion. I'd look for a second. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay, Jared, thank you. From the TAC, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes the TAC unanimously.
From the CAC, can I get a motion, please? Motion from Peter, and second from Adam Kohler. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Next on the agenda is the section where we do presentations. We have 3 presentations today. The first presentation is from the Melbourne Orlando International Airport, and that's me. So I'm going to give that presentation. Okay, good morning again. Oh, boy. Okay, so we'll start out with a slide here. This is kind of a snapshot of what's happening at the airport right now. You can see that at 2,500 acres, and there's about 20,000 people that work, live, and basically pass through the airport every single day. It's really a small city. It's a small city within a city. And geographically, it's located right in the middle of Melbourne, and you can't really commute anywhere in Melbourne without going around the airport. A couple other things is the FDOT recently did an economic impact study and says that the airport has a $2.8 billion economic impact. It's probably even larger than that right now. We've got three runways that were recently renovated, a 200,000 square foot terminal building, 8 jetways. We actually just added a 9th jetway. We're a foreign trade zone. We've got a fuel farm. But this is all indicative of the growth that has been happening at the airport. We're definitely in a growth mode right now. This is our total annual passengers, and you can see last year it was at 700,000, and that was almost double from the year before, and that was a COVID year, but still, if you go back to 2018 at close to 500,000, we went up about 200,000, and we'll get into that a little later. A lot of that has to do with TUI Airlines, our UK carrier, but significant growth with passengers is a theme right now. These are some of our airlines. We've got Delta Airlines at Melbourne, and incidentally, Delta Airlines has been serving the city of Melbourne and this community for 39 straight years. which is pretty neat. I think 1984. So next year will be their 40th year at our airport, nonstop. And they fly to Atlanta, back and forth from Atlanta 3 to 5 times a day. Our other mainline carrier is American Airlines, and they go back and forth to Charlotte every single day. And they have some seasonal service to Washington. One of our more recent air carriers is Allegiant Airways, and they're an ultra low-cost carrier. I'm sure most of you are familiar with them, probably have flown on them out of Sanford, but they recently came in last year, and they're performing really well. And you can see up there, they're going to be flying to Nashville and Pittsburgh. They actually also announced that they'll be flying to Allentown, Pennsylvania. So that's a new city for us, and that starts in December. Another new airline, domestic airline that we're seeing is Sun Country Airways, and they're flying to Minneapolis. This is less than daily. It's seasonal service, and their inaugural service was earlier this year. They're not flying at the moment, but they're going to extend that season going into the next season, starting in December through the spring of 2024. And they did really well. Their load factors were excellent. It was wintertime when they started, so a lot of the folks from Minneapolis wanted to come down here, but those flights were full going both ways, and that was really encouraging. So we've got a great relationship with them, and we're looking for more growth out of them. Another ultra low-cost carrier is Avelo Airlines. You probably have seen them in the news. They're a startup. They've been flying for a couple of years. They've got a pretty aggressive model, and I believe our airport fits them really well. I know it says that they're flying to 3 cities. They're actually flying to 1 city right now, and that's New Haven, Connecticut. That's pretty much their hub. They do really well out of Melbourne to New Haven. We look for them to add service soon too, so really like them as well. So we're in our 2nd season with TUI Airways, and TUI is they're a UK company that really provides holiday packages to Europeans, mostly folks from the UK. And they're flying, this is a seasonal service. It starts in March and runs kind of into November each year. And what's unique about it, besides it being international service, is the equipment that they're flying. They're flying the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, the Dash 8 and the Dash 9. It's a very big aircraft, and the Dash 8 holds 300 passengers, and the Dash 9 holds 345 passengers. So right now, this week, for example, they have 15 flights in and out of Melbourne, and those flights are full. So, I mean, you can do the math. It's a lot of people. So really excited about the opportunity that we have with TUI. And it's really about bringing the Europeans here, at least in the beginning, not so much us going over there, but they have talked about it. But those Europeans, they're here in our region, in our county, and certainly at Port Canaveral. I'll talk about that in a moment. But you can see there we have a 7-year agreement with them. And that's an exclusive agreement where they will only fly into our airport in this state for 7 years. And you can see there 240,000 international passengers. We went from like literally 0 to that. So it was a very significant bump. Myself, I've actually been working with this company for about 7 years. So it was really exciting to see them come in last year. So we've got a lot of new things happening at the airport. Like I said before, all 3 of our runways have been renovated. Really good infrastructure there. Our main runway is 10,181 feet long. It was originally a shuttle landing alternate site. It's a really long runway. Any aircraft, the biggest aircraft in the world, can take off and land on our big runway. We've got a new air traffic control tower. It was built recently, 2018 it was finished, but it replaced one that was built in 1962. That tower didn't have an elevator. It was only 65 feet tall. It didn't have all the modern technology that the new one has. The the new tower, the eye height where the controllers look out the cab is 105 feet. So went from 65 feet to 105 feet, pretty significant. You can see the whole airfield, and that's really what you want with an air traffic control tower. We've renovated our U.S. Customs and Federal Inspection Station, so these international visitors that are coming in, they're arriving and they're processing through a new large state-of-the-art space. We're pretty unique in Melbourne too, it's very efficient. I'm sure some of you travel internationally and going through customs can be painful at times. That's not the case in Melbourne. We have what's called the baggage first concept. So once you get off the plane, you process to the baggage claim in the international, the FIS, and you pick up your bag first. And then you go through primary screening. And the primary screening system that CBP is using in Melbourne is the simplified arrival. It uses biometrics, so they take your fingerprints, they take a photograph. There's no declaration cards, there's no kiosks, nothing like that. So literally the processing takes about 20 seconds. It's pretty neat. So we're excited about that, and so is our partner TUI. Terminal renovation, we just finished our first phase of the terminal renovation, and we added 3 gates. We added a new security checkpoint. Our old security checkpoint only had 2 lanes. Our new one has 4 lanes with a capability of 5. The FIS space, we have a new welcome center that has ground transportation in it and 5 bus parking spots. We have plans for 5 more very soon in the future. This is our new hold room and concession space as part of the project. You can see there it was $72 million. Incidentally, most of our projects are funded through grants, either the state or federal, FAA, FDOT, and FAA. We've been very fortunate to have them as our partners, and really could not have done these renovations without them. So, really pleased to be able to complete these projects. We have a new hotel. It's a Hyatt Place on the airport. It's literally right next to the terminal, and there's a sidewalk that runs from the hotel to the airport. And I actually saw the other day, I saw some passengers walking there, which really warmed my heart. So they're using it. But the whole concept around the hotel, it's pretty unique. It's going to be a fly-in hotel. So on the one side is the land side component of the hotel, where you could drive up to it and stay at the hotel. But on the other side, it has an airside element to it. So there's going to be an aircraft apron. It's not there yet, but we're working on it, where if you have an aircraft, you actually can fly in to the hotel, park your airplane, and stay at the hotel that way. The hotel also has this rooftop bar feature, which that's coming on board in a couple of months. But I would say think of the Melby downtown Melbourne, very similar to that, with a view. Instead of the view of downtown, you'd have the view of the airport at night, which that's going to be really good. But the hotel is open, and its occupancy is really high. So we're very pleased about that. The developer that just finished the hotel, they're actually getting ready to start another one on the airport as well, right next to it. So they're doing good. This is a rendering of the hotel, and it looks just like that. You can see the rooftop bar on the top there. Okay, we talk a lot about this project here in these meetings, and here we're really talking about the interchange, and that was a big success. That $38 million to create the interchange. That's what really, sparked the work that needs to get done to widen Ellis Road. But having that interchange there is very significant. If you look at the picture on the right, there's the beautiful new interchange, and then you look in the background, you can see our main runway and the parallel taxiway. And what's in between there, and you can see the bottleneck, is 2-lane Ellis Road. And that's why it's a #1 priority, because we need to get people to and from the airport quicker, and the folks that work along that corridor more efficiently. So really excited to be part of this project, and I can't wait for it to get done. Okay. Really, this slide kind of talks about, the region, and where we are trying to become more regional as an airport. But you can see here, obviously we have the beaches and Port Canaveral, Kennedy Space Center, and the theme parks. A lot of these folks that are on holiday from TUI, they stay here in Florida for about 2 weeks. That's their typical vacation. I think 13 days is their average. And they spend about half that time in Orlando at the theme parks, if you can believe that. And then, some of that time they may come over here and go to the beaches as well. But the thing I wanted to mention about TUI that I think is really unique, and it's a great opportunity for all of us, is the relationship and the connection that we have to Port Canaveral now. TUI actually owns a cruise line. It's called Marella Cruises, and this year they started sailing a ship out of Port Canaveral. They do that on Sundays. They have a 7-day itinerary, and so that particular cruise is supported by the flying that happens on Sundays. And right now there's 4 flights that come in and out of the airport on Sundays that specifically, about 95% of the people on those flights are going on one of those cruises, so on that cruise. Incidentally, the itinerary for the cruise is really interesting. It's not what you would say is typical out of Port Canaveral. There's 2 itineraries. One goes up the east coast of the United States, and I want to say Savannah, Charleston, Baltimore, New York City, and then the other one goes around into the Gulf. I think it's Miami, Key West, Tampa, and maybe even New Orleans. So pretty neat. And I mean, again, you think about the folks that are taking this cruise and they're coming over here from the UK. It gives them an opportunity to see, some things here in America. So it's pretty cool. Let's see what else is going on. So this slide really just shows how convenient from a driving perspective the airport, our region, is to some of these other areas, Kennedy Space Center, Port Canaveral, and Disney World. We're only 67 miles from Disney World, and our highway system's pretty darn good right now. I-95, the Beach Line, the 417, pretty good system as long as there's not an accident, right? But much better than I would say. We're in a much better position from a driving standpoint, going from here to Orlando or from Orlando to here than probably 10 years ago. This is an interesting slide because our airport, your airport, it's really known for aerospace technology and the companies and the tenants that are there. Northrop Grumman, GE Harris, Embraer. We now have Dassault Falcon, and there's more. But the airport's really the envy of a lot of airports in our country for our tenant base. And I've worked there for 28 years, so I've seen a lot of this growth. And we talked about the 2,400 acres. We used to have a lot of land available. There's not a whole lot of land left. And we're actually looking to acquire some more land. There's some vacant land to the northwest of the airport. That's one of our objectives. This is kind of what we're known for, is our tenant base, and it's something we're really proud of. I mean, so some of the aircraft manufacturing that's going on there is amazing. When you look at Embraer, it's the Phenom product. They're building the Phenom 100 and the Phenom 300. It's the most successful business jet in the world. It's the best-selling business jet in the world, and it has been for 5 years. And every single one of those jets is built in Melbourne. They used to be built in Brazil, but they're all being built in Melbourne now. Here's some other things that are coming regionally and at the airport. The Margaritaville, it's under construction there in Melbourne. That's exciting. That the old marina that was there, and it's been abandoned for many, many years. And so that's going to be great to see that. The 4.5-star hotel in Cocoa Beach, that's great. Our area needs an upscale resort like this. And then this Laguna Beach on the airport property, which is a mixed-use development with a large water feature in the middle. And more to come on that one. So we talk about air service development a little bit, and this is really getting into some detail, okay? We talk about our catchment area, and this is an area, geographic area, about 100 miles within the airport. And you can see up there it talks about zip codes, so 32 zip codes within that area. And there's, in 2018, 668,000 people took flights, okay, within that area. Not out of our airport necessarily, okay, but that's the available people that are taking flights. And it's 2.25 million people per year within that catchment area. And it's a little over 3,000 people a day are flying, are traveling by aircraft, by airline. And, this is, lots of people are moving here. You can see we're number 7 in the country, this area, which is awesome. But more on the catchment area stuff. You can see there 80% of our potential passengers are lost to other airport in our catchment area. And right there, 73% drive to MCO. And there's a lot of reasons. I mentioned one of them. The roads are really good. It's easy to get over there. They also have, there's a lot more options. Nonstop, direct, low cost, flights out west. You can name lots of things. But you can kind of see where we are, and we're capturing 19% of that number. So of the 3,000 people, the 2.2 million, we're capturing 19% at our airport for that geographic area in a year, in a day. And MCO's capturing 73%. This is a pretty detailed slide as well, but I think it tells a good story. And it's ranked by the markets. So when we're talking to airlines and we're trying to attract airlines, one of the first things we talk about is where are the people from our catchment area flying to? The number one place they're flying to is New York City on the list. Right now, we don't have a nonstop direct flight to New York City out of Melbourne. And you can see as a result, we only capture about 10%. But if you go down the list a little bit to Atlanta, and we talked about Delta a little earlier today, you can see we capture about 53% of the folks that are flying. And that's because we have Delta Airlines, and we're flying there every single day. So you can see what happens when we're able to add an airline to one of these cities. But this is the kind of detail that the market analysis that we get into when we're talking to airlines and trying to get them here. These are some other things that we talk about, our market, the growth. One of the big things is we because of our tenant base and because about 85% of the airport's revenue comes in from rents and leases, which is a little unique for an commercial air service airport, but it puts us in a very good position when we're marketing to new airlines that we're able to offer some incentives to them and have some of our tenant revenue kind of pay for that stuff. The other thing that I would say is that as a result of that, we have a very low cost to the airline per passenger. And that's something that the airlines look at, airports. It's about $6 per passenger that the airline has to pay for their fees, landing fees, rents, that sort of ground handling, that sort of thing, which is just extremely low. A couple of years ago, we were the lowest in the state. We're still, I think, in the top 5 of lowest cost per enplanement to the airlines, which is important when you're trying to attract new airlines. This slide really just kind of talks about where we're at right now with the facilities and technology. We are in this big growth mode, and one of the big things that we're doing in the terminal is we're going to a common use system. So every one of the check-in counters, every one of the gates can be used by any airline on the same computer terminal. And instead of having marketing that's affixed signs and things like that, we're going to all digital and electronic. And we're about 3/4 of the way done with that project, but that's working out really well. Operationally, you're able to move airlines around, and a new airline can come in, and we're able to set this up very quickly. So it really, really working out well. A couple other items. We're in a very good position from a fueling and maintenance perspective at our airport. We have a 200,000 gallon fuel farm that the airport actually owns and maintains. That's used by fixed base operators and some fuelers. And another thing that we have on our airport is a MRO, which is a maintenance, repair, and overhaul station. So if you drive by Apollo Boulevard or Martin Luther King Boulevard, you probably see all these airliners parked on a ramp, all different, Air Canada, Allegiant, Delta. They're at this MRO, and they're getting maintenance done. They're getting electronics put on the aircraft, the in-flight entertainment. STS Mod Center, that's the company that performs that work. They're experts in the industry at putting in-flight entertainment on the aircraft, and they're able to do it very quickly, like within 3 or 4 days. And some of their competitors, it takes them a week or 10 days. And every single day that one of these airliners is not flying is cutting into their profits. So this company is doing very well, and having the service at the airport is a big benefit. Okay, so if you're an airline or you want to rent anything, you want to talk to one of these 3 gentlemen at the airport. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah,
Henry.
Cliff, I just want to say that back in 1979, I had my office right underneath the runway,
Yeah?
and it is incredible what your team has accomplished since 1979. I mean, because I flew a lot out to LA, Dallas, San Diego, and all of those airports. I never expected our city to attain what's been accomplished.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Henry. I've actually worked at the airport for 28 years. I kind of grew up there. And, it's a real sense of pride for me to see that happen, especially now, what's happened in the last, 8 years. And we have an executive director, Greg Donovan. He was one of the guys up there. He's a real visionary, I'll say, and he doesn't take no very easy. He gets things done, right? And all the things that I talked about today, most of those things were a result of his leadership, and I'm just glad to be there.
Yeah, Peter?
Yeah. Wall Street is evacuating out of New York City. And I was wondering how are we doing as the place of destination? The financial services
Right.
and most of the financial offices are leaving New York City.
So, and let me ask you a question, Peter. Are you referring to that one slide where New York was number 1?
Yeah.
We're right now, New York is number 1 for people in our catchment area flying in and out of our airport. Some of them are involved in the financial institutions, but many of them are not. It's just, that seems to be the number 1 popular place. That's the most popular place for people to fly.
But many of the Wall Street headquarters that are in New York are leaving New York.
Well, and that could have an effect.
Relocating to between Texas and Florida, and I was wondering how we were doing.
I'm not sure how to answer that. That's really not my area of expertise, to be honest with you, Peter.
Yeah, Adam?
Adam Kohler, District 1. Can you tell me the year that those statistics were derived on slide 19 and 20 of your presentation?
Is that the pie chart?
Yep.
I want to say 2018 and forward.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Christine, I think, had her hand up.
Yeah, it used to be, didn't you guys have most of your revenue from?
Can't hear you.
Are you like going, no? You never-
No, always had most of our revenue from leases. Yep.
Okay, so commercial airlines and whatnot generate more revenue than
The commercial leases, like the Embraers and the Northrop Grummans, that's where we generate most of our, 84% of our revenue is generated from land leases.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, Pete?
Yeah, looking at that 40% growth rate in the last 4 years, well, lately I've been flying more on these sardine can airlines because if I went 1,000 miles in my car, just for gas in a motel, it would cost me $260. Our sardine type airline can get me there for about $130, another $30 for car rental. So it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
Yep.
Then there's some government trends that are going on where they're really starting to put pressure on us driving with gasoline motors. The big push on electrical vehicles where you can only go so far with a 2-hour charge. As we get more and more of that, you're going to get more and more of these sardine type airlines coming to Melbourne, and that's one of the reasons I support that gateway to I-95 that's so important. And I also remember Orlando, where we used to go into the tarmac and push out a rolling stairwell and get on one Eastern flight back in the early 70s, and you look at that airfield now, it'll blow your mind. And we're in a growth position. You're going to float up whether we like it or not, and we have opportunity now to do some infrastructure around a little bit cheaper than if we wait 10 years. And you're going to grow just because of the price competition between the sardine airlines and the cost of using a vehicle to get to the same destination. If I can get there at half the cost, air travel is going to grow. It's just the economics of it. And that's really what we're up against. And so you're going to see a lot of growth in just passengers, whether you like it or not. And that being said,
I like it.
Yeah, the way our area is growing too,
Yeah.
we've got 70 miles of Atlantic Ocean. That's a good thing, but not a good thing if you want to keep it to yourself.
Yep.
So there's a big influx of population headed our way too, and good luck in keeping up with it.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I agree with you, too. One thing that our airport does offer our community, your airport, is the level of service. We're a concierge, hometown airport. We've always been that way, and I'd like to think that we always will be that way. Because we are small, we're able to, offer a level of service from a customer standpoint, passengers, and to airlines and businesses that you are just not going to get at a big airport. So, just right down to the time when you have to check in. There's no lines. The parking lot is literally a 2 to 5 minute walk from the security checkpoint. You breeze right through the checkpoint. So, and that does make a difference to some people, the convenience.
Yeah, Cliff, you had mentioned about looking at the potential of buying some additional property to the northwest
Yes.
of the airport. I see you already own a nice little chunk up there, but one of the housing builders has the other chunk. Is this something that you would look at banking for future use, or do you actually have to wait until you have some growth plans for it before you'd actually put some cash down?
Yeah, we're actively pursuing that property. That's actually owned by a company, a corporation, the Northwest section, and we really want to expand the airfield, and we're running out of property to do that. So that's the direction we're going, and we're actually releasing or selling, and we have been for the last couple of years, some of our landside properties that, aren't necessarily, associated with aviation. So we're, in essence, kind of doing a land swap. We're selling some to buy, we're selling some of our undesirable properties from an airport perspective, from a business perspective, to then invest in the airfield and the airside properties.
That does look like it's about the last piece of undeveloped property you have to get. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Thank you very much.
Okay, I just want to say that was an excellent presentation, Cliff. And it just, all this growth and at the airport, it just underscores the necessity of widening Ellis Road. I mean, it just really does. It has to be done really sooner rather than later.
And who's going to come here if we can't widen the road?
Exactly.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Next up is a presentation on the Regional Intermodal Connections Committee by Laura.
Thank you, Cliff. Yes, that was an excellent presentation, and I think it was a great conversation to really lead into other modes and how do we connect all of these great modes. Last year, we decided to, with Brightline moving further into completion of their construction, we needed to start moving forward with really a serious conversation about how do we get Brightline to create and build a station here in Brevard County. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold. So we created a Regional Intermodal Connections Committee. They began meeting this year. The purpose of the committee was to really start the collaboration and the discussion about an intermodal station and what is an intermodal station, what does that mean to our community. And it's really the use of more than one mode and the transferring of people and goods between those modes. In this particular case, passenger rail. And when they stop here, what other modes do we need to be providing at that station for people to get onto and reach their final destinations? The committee held 5 meetings over this past year. On page 61 of your agenda package, it does list the committee members. We had representatives throughout the community from the Canal Port Authority, from our chambers, Space Florida, the airport was involved, local jurisdictions, and citizen advocates. One of the main goals was we wanted the station, and what makes a successful station? We needed to understand that up front. There are 3 key elements. Number 1 being the location of the station and its proximity to other destinations, having access, understanding the access around that station, including the transportation system. And then the station itself, we need to have a transit-oriented development design around the station that would employ us to provide mixed uses, connections to other employments and the final destinations. So at the very beginning, when the committee met, we talked about identifying what makes Brevard unique, what is going to really drive people from other areas, specifically from down the south and eventually the Tampa area when Brightline extends that way, to Brevard County. We know that we have environmental treasures, especially with the Indian River Lagoon. We have the space industry, which eventually we will have in the future, pedestrian citizens, hopefully taking off to space, maybe for a day trip. Cape Canaveral with this cruise industry. We also have our high-tech industries and our beaches as major destinations. So with those key Brevard's best, what were the specific destinations? If people were traveling here by train, where were they going to want to go once they got here? These areas included obviously the Kennedy Space Center, Port Canaveral, the beaches, areas such as the Brevard Zoo and eventually the aquarium that is under discussions right now being developed out by the port. Looking at all that, when people come here, what feeling do we want them to have? And the committee decided that we wanted to make sure our community was connected, it was futuristic in feeling, and provided those multimodal connections. So with that, there are opportunities and challenges for both the community with our land developers and the government local agencies. We need to be focusing on transit urban development now. We need to be building those multimodal connections. I had mentioned the infrastructure near the station, and being that we have identified the Cocoa area, when we are talking about the 524 widening, Clear Lake Road improvements, State Road 528, all of that is connected to the potential station in the future. What needs to be included in those construction plans to make sure we have a true multimodal, intermodal station where people can get easily from one destination to another. When they come here, we know from the key destinations identified, yes, they may stop at Cocoa and go around the immediate vicinity, but they really are wanting to get to that final destination. And this station needs to accommodate those modes in a safe manner. So with that, we are moving on to the next step. We are starting our intermodal station feasibility study. As I mentioned, we have already identified back in 2015, we did a rail station location based on different elements and criteria, proximity to these destinations, how much volume was the local surrounding area going to be able to accommodate on our roadways. But we have to remember also, the station itself, we're really an attractor. People are coming here, not necessarily, it's not a commuter station where our local citizens are going to be using it to commute for a job, but really people are going to be coming here, getting off in Cocoa, and then they're going to reach their final destination. So that's kind of something unique that might be a little bit different than the stations you're thinking about down south that we have seen. They are high population, high employment right around the station. I believe we want to stay a little bit not like Miami. No offense to anybody who likes Miami, but we want to make sure we keep our uniqueness around here, keep our Brevard's best preserved so people continue to want to come here. The elements of the intermodal station study are going to, again, key into those major destinations. How do we get from one place to the other? The station needs to include, like bus stations, transit. If we're going to have different destinations for travel with a travel agency, I think there are opportunities with TUI there at the airport. Also understanding the travel demand, as I mentioned, people from the Tampa area, from Miami, Fort Lauderdale, anybody who cruises on a regular basis, a lot of times you will go to the cruise ship, and with Port Canaveral being able to accommodate larger ships, I think we have a really huge catchment area over in the Tampa area because they're restricted by the Sky Bridge, so they're never gonna have those super large, super tall mega ships, so we want them to get on the train and come here to Brevard and use our systems. We want to develop a conceptual design plan. This is not necessarily we want to design architecturally what it's going to look like, but we want to design conceptually how much space do we need? How much space do we need for those buses? How much space do we need for the sidewalks, for the bicyclists, for the Ubers and everything else? Also identifying our surrounding infrastructure improvements, and by that I was referring to also the 528, as I mentioned before, 524. But the timing of that is critical. So the creating of an implementation plan is the ultimate goal of this feasibility study. What phases for what projects need to be done at what timing in order for us to begin the actual construction? And before we begin that construction, we really need the community to get together, support this endeavor of having a station here. We have different elements we're going to use to reach out to the community. We're going to have comment cards. We'll have a website. We will key on other pop-up events such as Downtown Coco's. I think they have a holiday festival or something in their area that we could set up a booth. We could really get the word out on what we're looking at. But without those partnerships, it's going to be very difficult to get, I think, a station built. So that's the most critical factor that we need. That was the main purpose of the RIC, the Regional Intermodal Committee. Get that conversation started. Get those developers along with our community talking together and really reaching forward to get a station here that is futuristic. The time plan for the station study is over the next year and a half. We are currently gathering data, doing an analysis. In the spring, we'll be doing the concept development, finalizing it then in the early 2025 at the latest. So your role is really to Be involved, support us. When you hear about a potential community event that we may be at, please come out and support us. Participate specifically in our long-range transportation plan being headed up by Sarah Crom. That is going to be critical to make sure when we go into this implementation phase, the timing of us finishing this study is very important so it can feed into the long-range plan and the different phases that we still need to do. We do not have the design, the right-of-way if necessary, and construction planned out right now, but the purpose of this intermodal study will be to identify those phases. I believe in your handout you do have, or in your agenda package, there's a handout in there that includes the different phases to construction of a station. We really want to lay the foundation and lay those expectations of what can this station be. It's not just a station that you want to get off and never come back to. We want people when they land here to say, wow, I want to come back to Brevard. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have, but I just wanted to give you a little summary on what the committee did for us, setting the foundation, and now we're moving forward into the next phase. Yes, Pete, I think you have a question already.
Oh, you're pointing at me. I was.
You're grabbing the microphone.
Well, I
You're
was
ready to
fighting
go.
with Adam over the microphone. You know, we were back and forth. Has anybody talked to Sunrail? I mean, is Sunrail even
Regarding-
part of the equation? See, I can use Sunrail. Brightline, I don't go to South Florida anymore. I'm not a cruising type of guy, but Sunrail would do me a lot of good. So has anybody talked to Sunrail? I'm being greedy about this. I could jump on Sunrail. They're going to Orlando International now. From there, I can go downtown. I can go to the theme parks. A lot of good. I have people hit up on me all the time, take them to the airport because they don't want to pay long-term parking. I'd rather just drop them off at the Sunrail station and be done with it. So, you know, has anybody talked to Sunrail, or is that something that's not even thought about?
Thank you, Pete. That's a very good question, and that's part of the education I think that we have in front of us, which is a challenge. The Brightline station that's here is not what Sunrail is. Sunrail is a commuter rail system. I do think, though, there is opportunity for, quote, commuter-type revenue passengers where they would get on at Cocoa and maybe go to Orlando, but it's really not to try and capture that type of ridership. I think it's an opportunity, but for Sunrail, it's a whole different type of train system. This is more regional, statewide commuting.
Well, they can use the same tracks. See, I don't want to bring people here. I want something that's going to benefit me, a resident of Brevard County, where I can go someplace that's useful to me. I mean, bringing people here is happening, whether we like it or not. So I'm just throwing that out there just to cog the machinery a little.
Yeah, understood. And we also have to understand, you know, Brightline, it's a private entity, private funds, and Sunrail is state, so.
Veronica.
Laura, can you go back to the schedule slide? Okay. I just wanted to see
Yeah,
the dates.
I would mention that on our website, if you go to our intermodal planning, it's under what we do, intermodal planning, and then there's two links. One's to the Regional Intermodal Connections Committee and one's to the feasibility study. If you go to the feasibility study page, it does have a much more detailed schedule with the different tasks that are going to be done and the estimated time frame. And we will be updating that web page throughout the study. So I do recommend that you keep tabs that way.
Adam Kohler, District 1. Ordinarily, I agree with Pete, but in this case, I don't. I agree with you, Laura. I think the whole purpose of this station should be to attract people from out of town and not to facilitate the folks that live here. So I'm on line with you. Sorry, Pete, I can't agree with you this time.
Greg.
Greg.
Pete, to your point about a Sunrail connection, under the MPO Alliance, prospective transit projects that are studied or in development, they are already looking at extending Sunrail to OIA, Terminal C, and there's your hop on, hop off.
Done deal. Bring them here.
Sure. The micromobility portion, and what does that have to do with anything? So here's my take as a planner. I hear about how there's issues with some of the electronic or electric, little vehicles that are micro-mobility, and that some of the bigger cities are banning them. So I don't get that part. With the rest of your little circles, I understood, but what does that micro-mobility have to do with that station?
It'd be providing access as another type of mode. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be included. It's going to be evaluated and how much service that actually needs to provide. You have to remember, a station's got to be supported by vendors and people who work there. And that particular demographic, in the Cocoa areas, how are we going to serve the station as far as employment and who's going to work there? People are going to want to walk there. They're going to want to bike there. They might use a little bit of the micromobility. You also have to consider we have the East Central Florida or the Eastern Florida State College. I know it as BCC, whatever it's called now. And the University of Central Florida is right there, the Cocoa campus. That's within walking distance of where we're thinking about having a station. So we know that the younger generation likes to have all the new gadgets, and it's very likely that we'll want some of those accommodations there at the station.
Just be careful with the electric vehicle thing, because like I said, the more congested you are, the more problem.
Well, that's why I mentioned it's important, we don't want to put the minimum sidewalk in. If we're thinking about, we truly want that TOD and we want a station there, we need to make sure when the construction's done on some of these surrounding corridors that it's wide enough to accommodate and have separate bike lanes on the roadways so they're not mixed use within, an 8-foot wide sidewalk. Ginger?
For your information, we have a lot of people here in Brevard County that will ride their bike over to Orlando, then jump on the Sunrail and do various things. And the Sunrail has been accommodating the bicycles to go on board to the train in order to reach their destination. They're spending gobs of money in bed and breakfasts. So while you guys are inviting tourists to come to our area, our citizens are leaving this area because there's nothing to do. There's no connectivity.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the scooter kind of thing and how in the big cities, they have a real problem with those scooters going too fast on sidewalks, and there's been deaths about it.
They don't
We
belong
certainly,
on-
as a TPO, don't want that.
They don't belong on sidewalks, and our legislature needs to address that. Seriously. And they also need to reverse the age category. They increased the age category for the golf carts up to 16 just recently, but they reduced the age for children using electric vehicles, which as a bike shop owner, I'm dead set against.
Thank you. Any others? Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing everybody at
Laura?
the pop-ups.
Yeah, before you leave, I have a question for you. You said you're discussing having an event in downtown Cocoa at some festivals. Don't talk about this. I think it would behoove us to have events at all the cities. I mean, it's if you go around, we're all well aware of the discussions of having a Bright Line stop in Brevard County. I mean, personally, I would have loved to have seen it in Palm Bay from a personal standpoint, but even have it in Cocoa will benefit the entire county. So I think we need to get out and let people know, why and the benefits of having it in Brevard County.
Good point. We'll be coordinating closely internally with our long-range transportation plan, where we're outreaching and including all the conversations at all the events we do. But thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
No, I don't really have another question for you, Laura, but in general, e-bikes is something that's coming to a boil. Yeah, these little electric-powered vehicles, bicyclists, scooters, downtown Orlando where they're on the sidewalk 20, 25 miles an hour. People have no experience in driving them. Here in Brevard County, at least 40% of the trail users now are on electric bikes. Somewhere down the line, a segment has to be set up to address some of the issues with them, because the issues with them are really, really serious. It's not a good mix to have kids and joggers and untrained bicyclists going at 25 miles an hour that really don't know what they're doing. It's just not a good mix, and it's something that's coming to a head. And as being a transportation planning organization, we kind of need to put our heads together on how to address this and where we're going to go with this and come up with some reasonable solutions to make all of this work. I like the idea of e-bikes, and there's definitely a place for them. And I'm even thinking about getting one so I could double my range. I could go to Sanford and take the easy way back.
Yeah, Pete,
So, I mean, you know, that's my thinking. I can now travel twice as far, you know, just take the power, enjoy the scenery coming back. But everybody isn't as experienced as I am in bicycle use, and that's where the problem comes in. So it's something that we really need to address. And Cliff kind of mentioned that in the past, that how the battery-operated planes, the little ones, and they weren't ready for them.
Yeah, the drones.
Yeah, the drones,
Yeah,
they
the
weren't ready for
FAA
the
wasn't
drones,
ready
how
for
the
the drones.
technology was ahead of the FAA, and we're getting that way with the e-bikes too, where, you know, the e-bikes and their use is getting ahead of our safety and our driving and, you know, our experience and our road use, and it's coming time to address it.
yeah, Pete, what you're talking about is right up Ginger's bailiwick, so you ought to talk to her about it.
Well, no, it's not just up her alley. I'm out on Orange Avenue in downtown.
Oh, no, I
Orlando.
understand that, but she sells
and,
them.
you know, it's like,
Yep.
if I just took a step sideways, I get creamed. Them bikes are a lot heavier than me. So, you know, I hear her, and at the same time, I see them out on the trail, dark clothes, no helmet. You know, you can see them coming. I mean, they're hauling butt. And we just need to get some common sense about this before too many people are getting hurt.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Good job, Laura. Next up, Sarah's going to give us a presentation about the Governing Board Strategic Plan, the actual annual report, I guess.
Yep, good morning. I'm Sarah Crom, Senior Transportation Planner. As you might be aware of, for about 4 years now, we've had a Governing Board Strategic Plan that really, the purpose of it is to ensure that we are moving in a direction policy-wise and planning-wise to meet various goals and objectives laid out by our governing board. So we had our first one. We then updated our first one last year. It was adopted. So this is now our first annual report on our new governing board strategic plan. Within your agenda package, you should have the annual report. It looks very similar to the strategic plan that's in the back of your agenda every single month. So hopefully you're a little bit familiar with what's actually outlined within the strategic plan. So the strategic plan is laid out with 5 emphasis areas, which I'll go through each of them and just give you a very high level look at what we accomplished and where we're going in the next year. So the 5 emphasis areas are leadership, safety, linking transportation land use, resiliency and sustainability, and technology and data. So the first one that we're going to go through is leadership, and that's to represent and promote the Space Coast TPO. So every single member of our governing board, as well as our TAC-CAC and our staff, are leaders in the community and transportation planning. And our performance measure is to actually implement our guiding document, which is the governing board strategic plan. This past year, we had several accomplishments: adopting the legislative priorities, adopting our public participation plan, which is a 3-year document. 2 members attended our MPOAC Institute, as well as also we developed a grant identification tool that not only us, but our local governments can be using to look at those federal grants that recently came out. Looking forward into this fiscal year, we are going to continue to monitor grants and various funding sources. Of course, our annual legislative priorities, maybe that's an opportunity to incorporate some of the conversation you just had into that. The MPOAC Institute is offered every single year. We are installing a new officer policy that was just adopted by our governing board, and so that'll be the implementation of it. Our next emphasis area is safety. That is to implement a safe transportation system for all users. And our performance measure is to prioritize a safe system approach pilot project on a high injury network corridor and to evaluate and explore low-cost countermeasures. So this past year, we've worked on updating our high injury network maps. This is now leading into updating our Vision Zero action plan. What we're trying to do is we're trying to set ourselves up to pursue Safe Streets for All funding. So Shelby and Laura have been working very closely with the high injury network maps and now the action plan. Shelby through a fabulous Vision Zero workshop, as well as also numerous diverse outreach and safety events, whether it was to seniors or children or just the general public. For this year, as I mentioned, we will be finalizing the Vision Zero action plan and moving into pursuing Safe Streets for All funding on those high injury network corridors. We'll of course continue to track current and potential safety projects. Linking transportation land use is to plan a network that provides transportation choices. So going a lot into what Laura was just talking about, where we want to make sure when we're developing our network, we're providing choices and ability to get around. So our performance measures is to adopt plans for projects and programs that increase transportation choices. So it's all centered around when you wake up in the morning, hopefully you'll be able to make a choice on maybe it's not your car, maybe it's your bicycle, maybe it's transit. So this past year, we approved the Intermodal Station Feasibility Study work order and received the Intermodal Development Grant from FDOT that Laura just presented on. We initiated the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan, as well as also in conjunction with our LRTP this year, we are going to be updating Space Coast Area Transit's TDP in order to properly align those horizon years so that we can truly fully encompass transit within our planning activities. We formed the RIC, or the Regional Intermodal Connections Committee, and then we finalized the Fisk-Roy-Wall intersection control evaluation. So that will be moving into design. I believe the letting date is in October, I think was the most recent email I saw from the PM. So our upcoming activities is the development of the LRTP and TDP. We hope all of you will be involved in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just sharing on social media, when we're doing TDP surveys or showing up at one of those pop-up events, or just being involved when we're presenting on various milestones throughout the 2-year process. We will be holding a State of Transportation Symposium. Everyone mark your calendars right now. I should have put the date up here. It is November, now I'm gonna say the date wrong, November 15th. November 15th, right here, mark your calendars, and the next week or two, there will be an email blast that goes out with a save the date. It'll be a really great event. We will also, this week, Georgiana and I will be reaching out to many of our municipal partners to discuss speaking engagements. As Laura just presented on, the Intermodal Station Feasibility Study, Debbie will also be undertaking a Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan the scope will go to this committee and board in October. And as well as also a Mobility on Demand project, the scope will come in December. Next step is next emphasis area is the resiliency and sustainability plan for a resilient and sustainable transportation system, and it is the adoption of the Transportation Resiliency Master Plan was a performance measure, so we can actually check off one of our emphasis areas. As last October, we did adopt our first ever Transportation Resiliency Master Plan. Since then, it has won the MPOAC Noteworthy Practice Award in January, as well as also we had our Ride the Wave to Resiliency Community Symposium. Our plan is to continue to work with FDOT and other partners to implement the Transportation Resiliency Master Plan, as well as to continue to outreach and share resiliency activities. The Resiliency Master Plan will be presented at various symposiums and conferences, 3 of them in the next 6 weeks. Well, last week was the start of it, so it's really getting out there and gaining some momentum and notoriety throughout with our partners. Next, and our final one is technology and data. Implement technology to enhance reliability of the transportation system, and the performance measure is to launch a data dashboard. We have continued to fund the TSMO operational support for Brevard County Traffic Operations Center. We began scoping of a data dashboard development project, which since then, the data dashboard development project has been approved in July to begin work, and continue coordination on finalizing the design for the Traffic Management Center. Upcoming activities, we will actually be launching the data dashboard this year, so more to come on that in early 2023. We are going to be updating our context classification and level of service, as well as also we're going to continue our coordination with Brevard County through the construction of the Traffic Management Center. And with that, if there are any questions about Governing Board Strategic Plan or where we've been and where we're going.
Christine?
Go ahead,
Just
Christine.
curious as to what's going to be on that data dashboard.
So we started to throw like everything but the kitchen sink at it, and then we kind of pulled back a little bit. And so some of it is going to be, well, actually a lot of it is going to be what is involved and what is needed for our list of project priorities applications. So traffic counts, the context classification, functional classification, number of lanes, whether it's on the high injury network, the Vision Zero high injury network or not. Our state of the system report and the data within there. I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but we'll do some soft runs with our transportation subcommittees before we actually initiate it. So, but we're hoping this year's list of project priorities, and rather than using the giant booklet that I developed of all of the resources, you'll be able to go to the data dashboard and get a lot of your resources there, as well as also any kind of conversation or interest that you have in any corridor.
Pete?
2 comments. First, linking transportation and land use. So are we going to outlaw rezoning? Get rid of politicians?
Well, we can encourage our local partners to
Well,
consider.
well, especially you planners, there's nothing worse than a politician to jump in the middle of your crap, mess it all up. Well, anyhow, looking at the slides, the one area where I think in Brevard County there's the most area for improvement, that's technology and data, the ITS systems. Areas that have them fully implemented, the way they work is pretty cool. You have directional splits on the traffic, so one side automatically, certain times of day, gets more green than the other. Left turns are put out of business for a while to where the side needing the traffic gets to go ahead. Here in Brevard County, we are sorely lacking in that area, and that is one area where you don't have to build $80 million a mile roadway. We could probably implement that and really improve our traffic flow for the least amount of cost, and that's just my input on it. That is really cool when it works. And
It's a lot of bang for your buck with
we don't have much that works around here.
I really like the ones that identify me on my bicycle when there's no cars and actually will trigger the light. That's great. Not too many of those out there, but those are great.
Adam Kohler, I'll be brief. Where technology and data improve safety, that's a good thing. When I joined the committee here over 2 years ago, I don't recall safety being in the number 2 spot. And I appreciate the fact that we moved it up over the last few years. And I've already mentioned this before, but I wanted to reiterate it now for anybody that's new here.
Well, it works. I love my radar detector.
Any other questions for Sarah? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good job. The next area on our agenda, this is the final area, is reports. Our first report is from the Florida Department of Transportation. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, committee members. I want to introduce myself. My name is John Scarf. I'm the new MPO Liaison Administrator for District 5 here with FDOT. And I have a new employee also. He will be serving specifically with Brevard. Please stand, Charles. He goes by Chuck Coppernell, so he'll be your new MPO Liaison here in the future. So he's going to be shadowing for a little bit prior to actually stepping up to the plate. If you turn to page 69 in your agendas, you do have your monthly report. There was a couple of closures that I wanted to point out, one being State Road 500 from Riverside Place to A1A. And so that will be having nightly closures from September 14th and September 15th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And the second would be Wickham Road on I-90, at the I-95 improvements, and basically mast arm improvements are taking place at that project. September 17th to the 22nd, from 8 p.m. at night to 7 a.m., there will be lane closures taking place as well in that area. One thing, although District 5 was largely untouched by the Hurricane Idalia, we did provide support up to District 2 to our north. So we mobilized, manned the EOCs, and then made sure we gave them the support they needed up that were actually impacted by the hurricane. So we just kind of want to put that word out. The FDOT's helping each other across districts. Pending questions, that's all I have for you this morning. Ma'am. Yes.
Any other questions for John?
All right, thank you.
Yes, I do.
Okay, one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just recently drove on Highway 192 west of 95, and I noticed was it the rumble stripes that were put on the road?
That project specifically, I'd have to look it up, but I can look into, if you have a question regarding it, I can look
Yes, I
into it.
was extremely disappointed in the placement of the strips.
Okay.
They're putting any cyclist in harm's way that travel out that way to do a Deer Park loop. They're on the inside on the shoulder.
Okay.
It restricts cyclists from rotating.
I will make sure I pass that information along.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, John. All right, next up is the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Advisory Committee.
I do not have a report today. Our August 28th meeting was canceled due to quorum and hurricane concerns. And so we have rescheduled it as a special meeting on September 18th in order to hopefully stay on track with our two action items, which would be the approval of the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan scope prior to coming to the TACCAC and Governing Board. And then, of course, our BPAC strategic analysis that we've been working on for about a year now. So in October, hopefully I'll have more to report. Thank you.
Questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board.
Good morning.
Morning.
The Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board meeting was held on August 14th. There are a few highlights from the meeting. First was the approval of a rate calculation model for the fiscal year 23-24. Space Coast Area Transit and the Space Coast TPO are currently in the process of advertising 4 available TD-LCB membership positions. We're also seeking to fill available agency appointments, agency-appointed members. The next meeting will be Monday, November 6th at the Vieira Government Center. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Public engagement report.
Abby has included some highlights for public engagement for July and August in your package, and it was 2 very busy months. Shelby was out and about doing lots of different events. One of our very successful events was a Stop on Red pop-up event, which we held in Palm Bay this year, and it was at the intersection of Port Malabar and Babcock Street, which is a high injury network corridor and intersection. And so the TPO team was out there with law enforcement in the city of Palm Bay. Thank you, Frank. It was a great event. It was extremely hot, and we saw a lot of close calls, and it just really makes your hair stand on end. It was very clear why it was a high injury network intersection. So it was very successful, and I think that it really did bring a lot of awareness to motorists through that intersection. And so we do have, I wanted to mention, kind of brag on Abby a little bit. Our 2020 annual report took home an award of distinction at the Florida Public Relations Association 66th Golden Image Awards, and you all got a copy of this, I think, a couple of months ago. Yeah. And so we're very proud of it. So Abby was the project manager on this and worked with our consultant, HDR, who helped execute the vision of this annual report. So we're very proud of that. So thank you.
That's awesome. Let's give him a round of applause for that. Thank you, Georgiana. Any questions for Georgiana? Okay, local government report. Does anybody have anything they want to say from their local government? Okay. Don't see any. Anything else to be brought forward? Christie.
Talked about the pop-up, the red light pop-up. Other states have looked into having people just stop on red and not make a right turn on red. Is Florida looking at that? Do you know? What's politics?
I do not know, Shelby, if they are, I know Shelby attends statewide community traffic safety team meetings. It is, they are looking at it, I think, on a case-by-case basis. I think, getting away with turning on, right turn on red, I think would be great. It's not good for pedestrians. People do not pay attention when they turn. They're looking to the left and then they turn to the right. So I do not know if the department, and I don't know if John may know this. Yeah. Shelby, have you heard anything from the statewide perspective? Yeah, okay. Yes, I think they are looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and when we've brought it up before, it seems the department is interested in perhaps putting signs, no right turn on red, depending on the intersection. So something we certainly support.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good topic. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.